Is the magic number really $100,000? Or is the real milestone something you can't even see in your bank account? Time? Most people spend years obsessing over dollar amounts. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Each of these feels like a finish line, a magical number that will somehow change everything. But here's the uncomfortable truth. None of those numbers actually hold the key to financial freedom. What matters far more is something much less exciting, much less glamorous, and much harder to stay consistent with. Years. Because money doesn't grow the way most people think. It doesn't explode overnight when you hit a certain balance. It builds quietly, like water filling a reservoir drop by drop. At first it feels slow and almost invisible, but with time, the weight of those drops becomes unstoppable. So the real question isn't how close you are to $100,000. It's how long you've been in the game. From the moment you start caring about money, society throws magic numbers at you. Save your first $10,000, they say, and you'll finally feel secure. Hit $100,000 and you'll unlock the turning point. Cross $1 million and you'll be free forever. These milestones are repeated in books, on podcasts, and all over social media. And to be fair, they do matter in some ways. 10,000 is often the first real safety net people ever build. 100,000 can mark the first time compound interest actually feels tangible. A million still represents the classic dream of never having to work again. But here's the problem. Numbers like these are easy to measure, but they can also be misleading. They trick you into thinking wealth is a destination, that once you hit one of these milestones, everything changes. In reality, these numbers are just snapshots, temporary markers on a much longer path. You can hit $10,000, spend it on a car, and be back at zero in a week. You can even hit $100,000 and lose half of it in a market crash if you panic and sell. The number itself doesn't protect you. What really matters is something invisible. How many years you've been consistent. Because time, not numbers, is the real foundation. The longer you've been saving and investing, the stronger your habits, the deeper your resilience, and the more unshakable your progress becomes. That's why the obsession with magic numbers often leaves people frustrated. They think they're behind because they don't see a certain balance on their statement. But the real milestone, the one that truly shifts your trajectory, can't be measured in dollars. It's measured in years. When you first start investing, your own contributions do almost all the work. Every paycheck you put aside feels like a drop in the bucket. The growth you see is mostly the money you sacrifice, not the money working for you. But something happens when enough years stack up. 5 years, 10 years. Suddenly, the returns begin to matter more than the deposits. At that point, the dollars you already invested start generating new dollars. And those new dollars don't stop. They keep multiplying, even if your own effort stays the same. It's the invisible hand of time. At first, you're carrying the load uphill, but eventually, the weight shifts. Your money takes the lead, and you become the passenger. Think of it like building a campfire. At the start, you're on your knees, blowing air, adding sticks, struggling to keep the flame alive. But once the logs catch fire, the heat feeds itself. You can step back, and the fire keeps burning long after you stop tending it. That's what years do to money. The early effort feels heavy and unrewarding, but once the system catches, growth no longer depends on your constant struggle. It depends on time itself. This is why the magic number is misleading. It makes people think the transformation comes from hitting $10,000, $50,000, or $100,000. But the real transformation comes from years of patience. Because with time, your dollars stop being static savings. They become active workers generating more value than you ever could on your own. If this breakdown is already giving you a new perspective, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. This is particularly one of the most important topics we've covered on this channel so far, and your support makes a huge difference. It not only helps our community grow, but it also tells YouTube this is content worth sharing with more people who need to hear it. So hit like, subscribe, and let's keep going. Let's put this into numbers with a simple example that anyone can follow. Imagine investing $500 every month at an average return of 8% per year, with dividends reinvested and no interruptions. After 5 years, you will have contributed about $30,000 of your own money, but your account will show around $36,700. That extra $6,700 is growth, and it came purely from compounding. Still, most of the result is your own effort, not the market. Push it to 10 years, and the story starts to shift. Your total contributions double to $60,000. But now the account balance reaches nearly $91,500. The growth alone adds up to more than $31,000. The market is no longer just helping. It's starting to compete with your deposits. Keep going to 20 years, and the difference becomes dramatic. You will have contributed $120,000, which already sounds like a serious achievement, but your account balance will show close to $294,500. The growth, around $174,500, completely overshadows your contributions. At this point, compounding is doing far more work than you are. And that's the real milestone most people miss. It isn't about hitting $10,000 or even $100,000. It's about the invisible crossover point where growth outweighs deposits. That's the signal that time has taken over the heavy lifting. Notice what actually changed. Not your income, not your hustle, not some lucky investment tip. The only factor that changed was the number of years you stayed invested. Think of it like a flywheel in an old factory. In the beginning, it takes everything you've got just to make it turn once. Each push feels heavy, and the wheel barely moves. But with persistence, momentum builds, and suddenly, even a light touch keeps the whole machine spinning. That's what years do to your money. Early on, you are the main engine. Later, time and compounding take control, creating momentum that no single paycheck could ever match. If the math of time is powerful, the psychology of time is even more important, because the hardest part of building wealth isn't knowing what to do. It's surviving the early years when your results feel too small to matter. Look at the first 3 or 4 years of consistent investing. You might sacrifice dinners out, vacations, or that new car upgrade. But when you open your account, the balance still looks unimpressive. It feels like the sacrifice is bigger than the reward. This is the moment when most people quit. The truth is that the first years are supposed to feel slow. You are laying a foundation, and foundations are invisible until the structure rises above the ground. That invisibility makes progress feel fragile, even though it's not. Think of running a marathon. In the first miles, your legs feel heavy, and the finish line feels impossibly far. But once your body finds its rhythm, you can run longer than you ever thought possible. The pace feels different once the early struggle is behind you. Or picture a brick oven being heated for the first time. At the start, you burn a lot of wood just to warm up the stones. It feels like wasted effort because the oven stays cold for hours. But once the stones absorb enough heat, the oven holds its temperature with very little fuel. The slow start becomes lasting power. Money works the same way. The first years of consistency look unimpressive on paper, but those years are the heat soaking into the stones, or the miles that train your legs. If you abandon the process before the rhythm kicks in, you never get to feel the shift. That's why understanding the psychology of time matters, because once you accept that the early years will feel slow, you stop being discouraged by small balances. You see them as proof that the system is working, not as evidence that you are failing. And once that mental switch flips, you no longer judge yourself by the numbers on the screen. You measure success by the fact that you stayed in the game long enough for time to start compounding your effort. History makes it clear that time beats almost everything else. You don't need to look far for proof. Take Warren Buffett. Today, he is one of the richest men alive. But here's the detail most people overlook. He started investing as a child, and by his 30s, he was already wealthy compared to the average American. Yet nearly 99% of his fortune came after his 50th birthday. Not because he suddenly got smarter, not because he discovered a secret investment, but because the dollars he had been compounding for decades finally exploded in size. His fortune was built by time itself. Studies back this up. One famous analysis of fidelity accounts revealed that the best performing investors weren't the ones making bold trades or timing the market. They were the ones who forgot they even had accounts. By doing nothing, literally nothing, They allowed time to keep working without interruption. Their edge wasn't intelligence or skill, it was simply patience. Now, compare two ordinary investors. One invests $200 a month for 20 years without stopping. The other invests $1,000 a month, but only for 3 years before giving up. Who ends up ahead? Logic says the second one, because he put in more money up front. But in reality, the first investor finishes with far more wealth. Why? Because consistency stretched across decades beats intensity that burns out quickly. This pattern repeats everywhere. Small contributions held for long periods almost always defeat large but short-lived efforts. It's the difference between a steady river, carving a canyon, and a sudden rainstorm that disappears by morning. The river looks weak at first, but time gives it unmatched power. So when you hear about people chasing fast results or looking for the next big number, remember this: the people who quietly let time work, who don't panic and don't quit, are the ones who actually cross the finish line. And when you look back, you'll see that the secret wasn't money at all. It was years of staying the course. For most people, the turning point doesn't arrive with a specific balance. It arrives with a specific amount of time. Somewhere between 5 and 10 years, the math and the psychology finally intersect. Why that range? Because in the first 5 years, your deposits are still doing most of the work. Every month feels like you are carrying the entire weight alone. The growth is there, but it's small enough to be overlooked. Cross the 5-year mark, and something starts to change. Your dollars are old enough to begin producing real returns. The curve of compounding stops looking flat and starts to bend upward. It's the first glimpse of acceleration. By year 10, the difference is undeniable. Your contributions are still important, but they are no longer the main driver. The machine has momentum, and the balance grows faster than your monthly deposits can explain. This is the moment most people describe as when it finally started to feel real. That's why the 5 to 10 year window is more powerful than chasing $10,000, $50,000, or even $100,000. It is universal. It doesn't matter if you started with $100 a month or $1,000 a month. The crossover happens in the same place, measured in years, not in dollars. Think of learning a language. At first, progress is painful and you feel like you'll never get it. But after a few years of steady practice, you suddenly realize you can think and dream in that language. The breakthrough doesn't come from a single lesson or a specific number of words. It comes from time spent immersed. Wealth works the same way. The discipline of 5 to 10 years transforms the experience. It changes your results on paper and your confidence in the process. It proves that consistency is stronger than luck, and patience is stronger than intelligence. So instead of asking, how soon can I reach $100,000? The better question is, am I willing to stay consistent for 5 to 10 years? Because if the answer is yes, the acceleration becomes inevitable. Understanding that years matter more than numbers is powerful, but knowing how to apply this principle in daily life is what actually changes outcomes. The first step is automation. If every deposit depends on willpower, you'll eventually skip one, then another, and soon the habit breaks. But when you set up automatic transfers, whether into a 401k, a Roth IRA, or a simple brokerage account, your money flows without friction. You remove emotion and decision fatigue, leaving time to work without interruptions. The second step is using tax-advantaged accounts. In the US, tools like the 401k, IRA, or HSA don't just protect your money from taxes. They accelerate compounding by allowing more of your returns to stay invested instead of being siphoned away each year. Think of it as giving your dollars a smoother racetrack with fewer speed bumps. The third step is reinvesting dividends. Dividends are the natural fruit of investments, but if you spend them, the tree never grows larger. By reinvesting, you allow those small streams of income to buy more shares, which in turn produce even more income. It's a cycle that multiplies itself as long as you let it run. The fourth step is resisting the urge to sell too early. The temptation to time the market or cash out after small gains is enormous. But every sale resets the clock and interrupts compounding. Wealth is built by holding long enough for time to magnify results. In practice, this often means ignoring noise, headlines, and temporary downturns. The final step is focusing on consistency over perfection. You don't need to find the single best stock or the hottest investment trend. What matters is staying invested month after month, year after year. The market rewards patience, not constant tinkering. Together, these strategies create an environment where time can do its work without distraction. And once the system is running, you'll find that the effort feels lighter because you no longer rely on discipline alone. You've built a structure where wealth grows in the background, whether you're paying attention or not. When you think only in numbers, the journey feels impossible. 10,000 looks small, 100,000 looks unreachable, and a million feels like another planet. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is discouraging. But when you shift your perspective to years, everything changes. 1 year of consistency doesn't feel impossible. 2 years in a row feels manageable. Stacking 5 or 10 years suddenly becomes a long but achievable mission. This change in perspective removes the pressure of chasing milestones. You stop asking, when will I finally hit $100,000? Instead, you ask, did I stay consistent this year? That's a question you can actually control. Think of building a house. If you stare at the final picture of the finished building, it feels overwhelming. But if you focus on laying one brick at a time, day after day, the structure rises almost without you noticing. Wealth works the same way. Years are the bricks, and the balance is the house that appears later. This mindset also creates peace. Instead of feeling behind because your balance doesn't match someone else's, you feel confident because you know you're playing the right game. You are focused on the metric that matters, time invested, and that gives you patience when others panic. The truth is, intelligence and timing matter far less than patience and discipline. You don't need perfect foresight or secret strategies. You need the courage to stay in the game when the progress looks invisible, because invisibility is just the first stage of compounding. You don't need $100,000 to start. You need 1 year of consistency, then another and another. That is the sentence that flips the entire journey. Numbers create anxiety. Years create clarity. So stop treating wealth as a finish line. Treat it as a series of seasons. Each season of discipline builds the harvest of the next, and the longer you let the seasons pass, the richer the harvest becomes. So let's put it all together. The milestone isn't $10,000, it isn't $50,000, and it isn't even $1 million. Those are just markers on the road, not the destination. The real milestone is invisible. It's the moment when time starts carrying the weight for you. It's when growth outweighs contributions, when consistency turns into momentum, and when patience becomes more valuable than effort. That's why the question you should ask isn't, how much money do I have right now? The better question is, how many years am I willing to stay in the game? Because years are what transform small deposits into life-changing wealth. Think of your dollars as workers. In the beginning, you are the one doing most of the heavy lifting. But as the years pass, those workers multiply, and eventually they run the business without you. They don't get tired. They don't take breaks. And the longer you keep them on the job, the more powerful they become. This is why wealth isn't a fantasy reserved for the lucky few. It's a natural result of patience, consistency, and discipline stretched over time. Anyone who stays long enough gets to feel the shift. Anyone who refuses to quit gives time the chance to do its work. So the real challenge is simple. Will you keep chasing numbers, hoping for a shortcut? Or will you measure your success in years knowing that time is the only true multiplier? The answer will shape your future, because the next year of consistency could be the one that tips the scale in your favor. And if you give yourself 5, 10, or 20 years, you might look back and realize that the life you dreamed of was never about hitting a number. It was about giving time the chance to work its magic. So I'll leave you with this. If years matter more than dollar amounts, how many years are you willing to stay in the game? If this video helped shift your perspective, like and subscribe for more stories that reveal how money really works, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you measure your progress in dollar amounts, or are you ready to measure it in years of consistency? Remember, every year you stay in the game could be the thin line that separates financial struggle from financial freedom. And if you want to go deeper, don't stop here. Click on one of the videos on your screen right now. Each one will take you further into the strategies, history, and mindset shifts that can change the way you build wealth forever.